welcome back to our video series. Today we're going to look at explaining the recent Bitcoin price action given its recent sell-off as of the Asian morning on March 16th. We'll look at a few things and I'll make a few observations. Nothing too conclusive, but just some details and some things that you may want to keep in mind. So remember to please like, comment, subscribe, and share this video. As always, it'd be great to hear your feedback. All right, now let's get started. So recently, the Bitcoin price has actually reached an all-time high, roughly just above 60,000, and has proceeded to come back down quite a bit, maybe about 10% from its all-time highs. And this is, I guess, for anyone who thinking that this is going to be a straight line up, it's a bit of a frustrating thing. You know, as a group, we're a little long Bitcoin. But not so much. But you know, again, we are a bit long, and we do wish that this asset goes higher. But in the meantime, let's take a look at a few observations, some things that make us possibly concerned about risk. So one of the few things that we do look at is as the coins reach their all-time highs in kind of the succession here. We have one here, it reaches an all-time high in you know, the around the New Year's, and then we have another one. Again, it hits an all-time high in the middle of February, and we see another one that comes up here in the middle of March. Each time, it has been followed by retraction. It may be actually a healthy retraction each time. So there is a bit of this speculative bubble that's actually being taken out, and we're establishing what we call higher lows each time. There's a bit of a higher low, right? This is a lows. This is a low. So these are all higher. So in the long term, this is probably a good thing for a trend. However, for the short term, one thing to look at is how much of the RSI is how much strength there is in each at the money high. So you can tell here, right around the beginning of January, this RSI was actually quite strong for this particular move. Then afterwards, this RSI is a little bit lower, so you don't end up with the same strong trend that is actually occurring. And again, what is worrying is that this peak RSI is continuing to fall. So it does mean that each time this strong trend going higher is getting weaker and weaker. So it is this is actually quite concerning from finding these tops. Of course, again, as we see these higher lows, this is a positive sign. So we do end up with some mixed signals here. Okay. When we look at the trends, again, we're using TradingView. We can tell that from a trend perspective, you know, higher lows, a good MACD, these all remain to be quite strong. So these are positive things that you can take in terms of you know, giving you a reason to stay long or go long Bitcoin, especially at these prices. We will move on. One thing, again, we get a lot of mixed signals here. The last time when the Bitcoin market fell, it was accompanied by a pretty healthy volume, which is this here, where this arrow is this upper arrow, I guess you could say, is pointing. Whereas in this case, with this sell-off, we're actually seeing a significantly less volume for the sell-off. So you can interpret it as you like, but it definitely does seem that the marginal interest in crypto has somewhat waned from the previous at all-time highs that were achieved. So there may be a little bit of interest exhaustion in this area, and this is in light of the fact that basically we did see the first round of stimulus checks, or the first go, being distributed to U.S. persons, and despite that, we're not actually seeing a lot of carry-through strength in these markets, to say the least. We can take a look at how much possible inflows there are. When we look at the recent inflows and outflows of, say, BUSD, we're actually seeing a net since the 10th of the peaking in early March. This past week, or past few days, we're actually seeing a bit of a decline in the market cap of BUSD, meaning that there is actually some net redemptions from this. So from the BUSD side, we are seeing a net outflow of money in the recent few days. Next, we will look at USDC. And one thing to note is that USDC does continue to see some increase in its market cap, so an increase in its outstanding. One thing to note here is in the case of USDC, the market cap went from about 7.3 billion to 8.9 billion between February 22nd and March 1st. So we saw a huge rise in the amount of USDC being printed. So that's a net, no matter how you look at it, that is a net inflow into the crypto markets, and that's actually a good sign in terms of a show of interest and a show of strength. But going forward, for the last 15 days, this increase has actually fallen from 8.9. The increase was only from 8.9 billion to 9.3 billion, a 4.4% increase. So particular to these non-USDT stablecoins, we are actually seeing a drop in inflows. So kind of, again, a little bit of a head scratcher here, because I do expect with these other all-time highs that these inflows to be continually strong at the same pace. When we look at Tether, this here is a bit consistent. It increased 10% between February 18th and March 1st. So we're seeing a consistent increase in Tether. And then from March 1st to March 16th, again, we saw this market cap go up even higher, around maybe a little over 10%. So this is pretty consistent in terms of the amount of market cap increases that we would expect in Tether, the amount of inflows. Though I'm actually quite surprised that we haven't seen similar types of inflows in the other stable coins that are licensed in the US as trust providers. So quite interesting. So this here in Tether is a little bit of a positive sign that we are continuing to see inflows into crypto. But again, this is all a bit mixed signals, just because I would have expected a lot more strength in the other two stable coins. So I also was wondering how basically stable coins and other assets are being utilized in the cryptocurrency area. And one quick sample we have is looking at the total deposits that are in Curve.fi. Curve.fi is pretty much a fixed income type of AMM. They deal with pairs that have very low volatility, probably has a high mean reversion aspects to it. So this is really a kind of a fixed income product, as we were saying in the traditional world. What we do want to find is that we want to find, as markets do get hot, we want to see assets from Curve actually reduce as is being put to work in riskier assets. So when we look at it in the past, from the February 18th to say March 1st, what we do see is exactly that, is a reduction in deposits. That there is some interest to put this money to work into more risk-adjusted, higher return plays. Interestingly, though, what we are seeing at the last 9 or 10 days is that the total deposits have actually increased, despite the fact that the markets have actually gone up in price. A lot of this is, the bulk of this is in stable coins. So this is actually quite intriguing that it's actually gone higher. And it's actually been able to retain a very stable or steady balances, even despite the markets going higher and higher. So this is quite interesting that there is seemingly a little bit of, again, less interest to put work in risky assets. So again, we could take a look at all these inflows and how much money is being put to work. So we can tell in the previous month to its previous at the highs, there was a lot of money actually being put to work. And then even in this fall, we're still seeing an increase in the stable coin market. So there, in this area, we do see a lot of interest, a lot of money being put to work in risky assets. However, in this rally, we've seen significantly less interest, whether it's volumes or whether it's inflows in this last rally. So quite interesting that we're gauging here that despite reaching other highs, it seems to be almost kind of, I would call it a disinterested high. So quite interesting. And thus afterwards, what we're seeing is again a drop in price that's accompanied by not large volumes, but small volumes. So something to be aware there. So again, thank you for listening to some of my observations in this market. Not very conclusive which way it's going to go, but I hope these are some factors that may help you with your own analysis in determining how you want to position yourself in Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies. Okay, thank you.